Hi, welcome to the 22nd episode of Startups Rise. Today, my guest is Ana Pricop. She is the co-founder of Outdid. Welcome, Anna.
Hi, David. How is it going? So
Everything's going
excited.
well. Very happy to see you here and have you on. There's a lot to talk about, really. So I'm just going to delve into questions. Obviously, I introduced you as the co-founder of Outdid, but we definitely want to know more about Outdid and yourself as well. So I guess before anything, and I do that with everybody, I want to learn about your background and your educational and professional background before you started your company Outdid.
Yeah, of course. So audit was really a natural step in my personal development when I started it because I started very early to build things for my community when I was living back in Romania. So when I was 15, I was already volunteering in different NGOs, teaching kids in orphanages math or teaching people from different villages, basic financial skills, and so on. I was always super passionate to do something for the community, and that's mostly because I came from a very, very loving family, and it was very hard for me to see that not everyone has that, and that was my main motivator to keep doing things. And eventually I built my own NGOs. Eventually I had more internships. And by the time I was 20, I already built my first for-profit company, which was an online language academy. Because I realized I have so many friends who travel around. They know so many languages, but they don't really have money. And I also knew people who are so busy making money that they don't have time to learn a language. So I was thinking to just match them. And that's how I was building a language academy. And then I had a few other internships, never liked them. I got fired once. It's like, that's not for me. And as most founders, right? Like almost every founder was fired at least once in their life. So we don't really like to stick to the rules. And then I moved to Paris with my partner for my master degree. I studied management, both in Romania, Spain, and France. And then during my master degree, my co-founder asked me, my partner asked me if I want to start a company. I said, I'm already having a company. If you want, you can go and start yours if you want. And eventually we kind of saw that we have very, very complementary skills and we really trust each other and we really enjoy working with each other and so on, that eventually he convinced me to drop out of my master degree, move to London with him, and we started the company. So this is how audits came to life.
Oh, well, whoa, there's so much to unpack here. I don't even know where to start. Um, I guess one of the first questions would be, and
Yeah,
I'll a bit diverge because of what you just said. You said started the language learning academy. Was it
yeah,
like an online thingy?
yeah.
Do you have a technical background? Do you have like CS, like knowledge skills or?
No. I have common sense though, like common sense, because I studied math and informatics in my high school,
Oh, okay.
and I was also very good at math, but not to the extent that I can build something myself.
I see. That's
Yeah,
really cool.
I
So,
used things which were already online. I could very easily make them myself, kind of.
oh, that's really
And
cool.
then, but nothing too fancy.
That's
The meetings were happening on Zoom, like nothing
got it.
crazy.
That's really cool. And starting a company with your because I didn't know it was your partner. Starting a company with your partner, it gotta be a very interesting experience. Like, eh, I don't even know how you would compare to starting with somebody who's not your partner, because I'm guessing it's the first time you're doing the co-founders thing. But how does it feel working with your partner and working on a company that you're both passionate about?
So all the things I built before was were with friends,
Mm.
but friends I really trust, and I knew they can do it, right? So I never built something with a friend who wanted to build something with me just because they're my friend, right? So I had my filtering, and I can definitely see a huge difference between that period of my life and when I build with something with my partner right now. I think the main difference is that you just talk about the company all the time, literally. Um, we have walks every day. We walk for 1 to 2 hours almost every day, and we talk about stuff. And we just talk about the company 90% of that conversation, and then eventually we talk about other things, but in a very small percentage. It's like what's in our head and in our heart all the time.
Yeah.
And it sometimes it gets boring just because we talk about the exact same thing. Or when I also like to do more things for my personal development, I went to a few temples, for example, or I read a lot. I see friends. I go to different events, not only founders events and so on. And the thing is, he's kind of passionate about the exact same things. So when I go to temple, he comes with me. When I read at night, he reads with me. When I go to a, I don't know, kirtan event with some spiritual music and so on, he comes with me. And it's kind of, sometimes it's tiring, it gets boring, but at the same time, we're also growing together, and that's very beautiful. So it has advantages and disadvantages. Yeah, but I
So
think it would not work if you're more independent. I'm a very big feminist, and that works well for me. But I can definitely see how that would not work for most people.
got it. And so what
Yeah,
I'm taking away from this is that you can't really leave work
yeah,
at work. You bring it home too. Um,
yeah, 100%, 100%.
that's very interesting.
Yeah,
I guess we mentioned Outdid a couple of times already, but we didn't talk about what Outdid is and what Outdid does. So can you tell me a bit more about that?
yeah, definitely. So out of this, we basically help companies verify the identity of their customers. So imagine you want to rent a bike, you want to rent a car, you want to buy alcohol online. Someone has to check that you are, I don't know, over 18, or you are from a specific country in order to access some financial products, for example. Someone has to check who you are. And usually that's not the company who gives you the actual product. They usually collaborate with a third party to achieve that. And this is what we do. It's a very oversimplified version of what we do, but basically,
I mean,
this is it.
the goal is obviously to make it, I guess, understandable enough for myself, because obviously I read about it a bit, and there's definitely like a very strong math and science behind it, and
Yeah.
so the goal is to make it simple for me and for the audience, right? So that you're doing the right thing. Don't worry about it. How did the idea come about? Like, was it just, and was it just like kind of one day, or was it this problems that you guys been facing for a while, and you were like, okay, well, let's do something about it? And
Yeah. So the idea came out of curiosity rather than anything else.
mm,
Um, Only a bit later down the line, we realized it actually solves a really big problem. So when we moved to London from Paris, we didn't know what we want to build. We just said, let's build something and let's figure it out. So basically in January, 2 years and a half ago, we moved to London, and then we didn't have any idea until mid-March. So we kept doing research and talking with people. We had no idea what we're doing, no idea what we're doing. But at some point, my co-founder, Vezin, he had to apply for some sort of visa in the UK, and he had to install an app from the government and then scan his passport. But in the way he did it, he just tapped his passport against his phone, and this is how the government knew everything about him, which is absolutely insane. And he's been in cybersecurity for around 6-7 years now.
mm,
So you can imagine that something clicked in his head back then. So he started to research, and basically he became so passionate about this problem that, sorry, not about the problem, but about how that works, right? How can my phone scan my passport? Now it is much more well known, but back then when we started, almost none of our friends knew that our passports have an NFC chip inside it. It's crazy. So this is how it started. And then I started to talk with different founders, and they said, well, actually, I have a big problem because I need to check who my customers are, but my customers don't want to reveal their identity to me They don't trust that I can take care of their passport. And this is when we created what Outdid is today, which is basically a solution to demonstrate that you are Javed, for example, without knowing anything else besides that. Or the fact that you are over 18, but nothing else besides that. No citizenship, no name, no nothing. Because everything remains in your phone.
That's
You
fascinating.
know?
That's
So that's the innovation we brought to the
That's
field.
that's fascinating, and I do want to
Yeah.
ask a couple more questions. With that, obviously, you don't have to really what's the word for it? What's the word I'm looking for? You don't have to disclose any confidential information, obviously, right? But I'm curious
The
about this.
tech is patent pending, so it's okay.
That's okay, fair. But I did read
Yeah.
about it on
Yeah.
in an article. I believe it was a Business Insider article or something like that, and there was a mention of zero proof, the concept of zero proof
Yeah.
mass. So I do want to ask a question about that. But before that, there are two things I want to ask. One, you said your skills complement each other, right? So I'm
Yeah.
guessing he's more on the technical side, doing
He's very technical.
the
Yes.
mass and all that, right? Because you did say that
Yeah.
he worked in cybersecurity and all that. And
Yes.
I
Yeah.
am guessing you're more on the business development, the funding and all. Is that the right way, or I'm
Yeah.
describing it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Got it. Got it.
Yeah.
And you know, obviously you're involved with Outdid, but I check your LinkedIn and there are other things that you seem to be involved in as well. Could you tell me more about that in your own words?
About what I do besides Outdid?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, quite a few things actually, because so usually founders are advised to not do almost anything else beside their company. And I get that. I tried that. I burned out because I realized that I work the best in a diverse environment when my brain is stimulated by many other things which bring me joy. Because audit brings me joy, but in a very different way than going for 1 week in the temple. That also brings me joy, but it's another type of joy, you know? And eventually I started to listen more to my heart and say, I want to take more opportunities. Of course, they are not my full-time thing. Of course, I don't spend 40 hours a week on them, maybe 3 hours for nothing crazy. But they definitely changed the way I build Outdid because I need that for my creativity. So what I do besides Outdid right now is I'm co-leading the Sigma chapter in the UK. Sigma Square Society is one of the biggest entrepreneurial societies for young, ambitious founders in the world. We have around 1,000 members, and the UK chapter is either the biggest or the second biggest in the world. And I'm taking care of that. We have around 130 members in the UK. So if you're under 26 and you already raised a pre-seed, or if you're an NGO, if you have an NGO and you still achieved some results, just give me a message. I can maybe nominate you for Sigma. And then I'm part of EWOR, which is kind of the YC of Europe. I don't want to call it like that because EWOR is a bit different, but they are really great if your target market is Europe. And that's more like an incubator / accelerator. And if you have only an idea or if you already have some traction, super happy to jump on a call and maybe nominate you for that. You can skip some steps in the process if you get nominated. So I can definitely help with that too. Yeah, I think Sigma and EWOR are my main things right now
Right.
besides out.
I
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned them briefly, but I don't know how you're doing so many things at the same time, and they seem like quite a bit of like responsibilities. It's fascinating,
Yeah.
really. And
Yeah.
I don't know how time manage. Maybe it's something we can talk about later, but it's really cool. So I guess let's get back to Outdid, right?
Yeah.
Outdid. So you said ensures user privacy, but also does very effective identity
Yes.
verification.
Yes.
What's
Yes.
the science? What's the technology behind it in a quite understandable, I guess, simple way?
Yeah. So one concept that's very important for audit, which has become more well spread in the last 1 to 2 years, is the concept of zero knowledge proofs. And as the name says, zero knowledge. So basically what happens is we manage to prove who you are without unnecessary knowledge, right? Like if I need to prove that you're over 18, I really don't need to know your name. I don't need to know your citizenship. So I kind of prove that in a zero knowledge way, right? Zero knowledge that doesn't have to, that's not necessary in a way. And that's how it looks. It sounds very complicated, and it kind of is, but basically on the surface, what happens is, imagine you have 1,000 followers on Twitter and you want to prove to a friend that you have 1,000 followers, but without him checking or her checking your Twitter account. And what happens is you show those 1,000 followers on Twitter through this to this system, which applies a zero knowledge on top of it, and your friend will get a message which says Javid has more than 1,000 followers on Twitter, and they have to trust it because it comes from a trusted source, which is Twitter, right? Like you can't fake that. You can't fake the numbers of followers you have on Twitter. Correct?
Got it.
So when you put that through the system,
Yeah.
in that magic box,
Yeah.
some things happen, and the only thing that leaves the box is the fact that you have more than 1,000 followers on Twitter, and that's it, nothing else.
And that box doesn't store any private information.
No.
Interesting.
Everything is locally stored in your phone.
Yeah.
So nothing leaves to our database, nothing leaks to our servers. So in case of a data breach, nobody can find you.
That's really cool.
It's really cool. And you can do so many things with this zero knowledge proofs. It's a really cool concept, yeah.
I wish I knew cryptography well enough to ask more, I guess, technical questions about zero knowledge proof, but I know
I might have not been able to respond to some.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Are there?
Yeah.
Do you have competitors doing the similar thing, or are you guys? Is there no way of handling it?
So when we started 2.5 years ago, I think we were the first ones in the world to do it because we couldn't find a competitor. I don't say they didn't exist. I say we couldn't find one. And that's why we're also having a patent pending application on the technology because it was really an innovation when we did it. And since then, more people, heard about the concept and they say, how can we combine that with identity verification? Because usually zero knowledge proofs work really well in the identity verification system. So it's quite a niche, and more people started to develop. And right now we are aware of 2 or 3 projects which are building what we already built. But none of them are ready yet. None of them are production ready.
Got it.
I think we are kind of the only ones which can sell the technology right now to monetize the technology.
Do you guys have people that use it currently, or do you guys gonna
we do.
Okay. And from what you mentioned, you touched upon a couple of industries, and it seems like, from alcohol store to government agency to healthcare, you can really use it anywhere. Like there are a lot of stuff. And it's a bit in a way like horizontal solution, right? It can be applied to across so many industries. Which sectors are you focusing on? Or you're like planning to expand literally into anything that is willing to use your technology?
Yeah, something that we are really excited about after exploring different markets, because this was our strategy from the very beginning, not to settle on a specific industry, but actually to explore as many as we can to understand where the solution makes the most sense. And one of the use cases we are the most excited about is definitely voting.
Oh, wow.
So we make sure that one person votes only one time. Or, for example, social media accounts. So basically you can't create a second account, or if you create a second account, we know that it belongs to the same person.
Wow.
So in this way, we are building an internet, which is first of all fully private because we don't need to know who you are, right? And then an internet that's safer because we can much more easily remove the bots scammers and spammers from social media. That's a long way to go,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the vision, to make the internet safer
I
for
mean,
everyone.
from what you were saying, sounds like it has a very massive application.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's going to be pretty big. And I hope it ends up being big. And you're a unicorn founder, so I can say I know a unicorn founder. Um,
Come on.
no, seriously. So you guys are building the company in London. You're based in London,
Yeah.
and
Yes, we are.
London is obviously have a very vibrant startup community, especially compared
Yes.
to other areas of Europe. But I mean, Europe in general compared to US, I would say personally, kind of lags behind in startups and VC investment and the capital for many reasons, and we can talk about it later, obviously. But um, what was your like rationale behind like building the company in London versus building it in San Francisco, for example?
So actually, when we wanted to leave Paris, we had to decide between United Kingdom and America, because we definitely wanted to go to a country where the startup ecosystem is vibrant and also where we can speak the language. I would have preferred to start a company in France because I really resonate with the culture, and I also studied there for a year, so I felt very good there. But I didn't know the language to to the extent where I can build a company there. So we definitely wanted to be in an English speaking country. That was for us. For other people, it definitely works to be somewhere and just meet and mingle with internationals and then build a company like that. But we really wanted to be more integrated in the culture. But when I had to choose, I told Zvezde, I don't want to be that far away from my family, because London is a 3 hour flight from Romania, and it has direct flight to my hometown. And I said I don't want to be that far away from my family. And that was one of the main considerations why I didn't go for America. Well, of course, besides the lifestyle, better quality food, and so on. But as I said before, I value my family a lot, and I don't want to have any regrets that I haven't seen them enough times. Especially after I read, so, I made some calculation. I said, well, if I see my grandparents twice a year and they're already 70, how many more times am I actually going to see them? You
Wow.
know?
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, maybe Audit is not going to become a unicorn because I didn't go to America, although it has the potential. But I fulfill many other dreams along the way because I decided to stay in London. And I'm very happy here with the communities. I think I really did my best to be integrated, take advantage of the startup ecosystem. I'm already leading the Sigma chapter here, which is the chapter is bigger than the American one. So, so I'm already kind of taking advantage and giving value in the community, and I feel good about it. And I also go home every 2-3 months, which is something many people don't do, although they would like to, you know?
That's very fair, very
Yeah.
understandable, and I kind of relate to that. I mean, I think America has made me a bit more individualistic, which my family complains about. But one of the reasons, of my move was very much similar for the family reason. So I totally understand that, and it's a very valid reason. Um, Thank you for sharing that with me, by the way. I guess, every entrepreneur comes across a lot of challenges when building a company, as there can be technical or otherwise, right? Like it can be in every way. What have been the most significant challenges that you've faced, and how did you like really work around it?
Yeah. Many challenges, of course. I think we had two main challenges besides many others. One was technological. So basically, it was difficult to build what we have right now because the technology wasn't there. So you didn't really have much to build on top because the fundamentals weren't properly where they should be. So that's why what we built was very innovative 2 years and a half ago, because it could have not been possible 5 or 10 years ago because of lack of technology. So that was quite difficult. It was very difficult to verify who you are, while the data stays in the phone and nothing leaves. That was quite difficult because zero knowledge proofs are actually quite big. And when we first built the app had 2 gigabytes. 2 gigabytes. That's a lot. That's a lot. It's like many videos combined and photos. That's probably the folder, the size of your folder with photos, that kind of thing, which is a lot. And right now the app has 50 megabytes, which is nothing, almost nothing. So in comparison, but that took 2 years of research and development and a lot of resources spent towards that direction, many conversations with different experts from around the world and so on. We could have not done it by ourselves. We had a lot of help from researchers from different universities and experts in the field and people who worked in the cryptography space for 2 decades, 3 decades, So that was a collective effort to make Outdid the company, which is today. And the second challenge was jumping into a field that's very old and traditional. The identity space is moving very slowly and it's quite traditional. Most people who are building identity companies are quite old, and that's okay. I mean, they have their knowledge, they deal with different use cases than we do, and then you need much more resources spent on compliance and lawyers and understanding regulations around the world. So you definitely need to be a bit more advanced in your career to build that. But when we went to an identity conference a few months ago, we were the only startup. We were the only startup in the room among 300 participants or something.
What were the others? They were just like old companies?
Not necessarily all, but they were already either very established or the founders were already definitely 40 plus. I mean, we were the youngest in terms of company and in terms of age and in terms of vision and in terms of everything, which already tells you a lot about the entry barrier. It was very hard to build trust, even with our customers or, because we're young and it looks like, do these things actually know what they're talking about? That kind of thing. So building trust was actually quite difficult too.
That's
and it's
actually
still difficult.
That's actually a super fascinating point because I've never heard of that before. That if the area is kind of archaic, kind of like they're not very receptive to change. Is that what I'm getting from this?
Yes, in a way, yeah.
So like,
or to move very quickly, break fast. It's a bit harder, because they work with banks, they work with companies where if you made a small mistake, you're out of the game.
True.
So I can definitely see why it's harder for them.
Do you guys have to get regulation? Do you guys have to get regulatory approvals, or like do you have to get some sort of approval from the government? Because obviously you're going to be working with identities, which is quite, very significant confidential information. And if you do have to get certain approvals, is that a very challenging and long process, or is it kind of you guys navigating it just fine?
It's not a challenging process, but it is very time consuming. And even to get a certification might take 1 year, 1 to 2 years, which for a startup, it's not nice. Let's put it like that. But for the use cases we tackle, we don't need all the certifications the other identity verification providers need. We have lawyers and we are aware of different regulations from around the world, and we definitely give our best to be compliant and so on. But we don't need as many certifications because we don't store the data.
Fair.
So it's an advantage.
Very true. How big is your team besides you and your co-founder? Do you guys employ other technical or perhaps other roles in your startup?
Yeah, mainly engineers.
Engineers.
Yeah, we're a pretty lean team just because we are focusing much more on R&D rather than go to market, and
Yeah.
because the startup is the product itself is very complex technologically speaking. So you have to make sure that many more things work well before you put it in the world. I mean, we have customers right now, but not customer like a bank, for example. Right. So we're still in developing
This
Outdid in order to become the product a bank can use, for example.
got it. This is actually very interesting, and it brings me to my next question, which obviously, as an idea, is a very novel, very interesting idea. It has many horizontal applications. It's a software, so there is not much of a requirement. Like you're not going to have a lot of cost in terms of scaling, and all that. And it seems like it can capture quite big of a market, especially because there's not much innovation happening. So as a VC, if I heard that, I'd be like, I'm interested, right?
You might, yeah,
But then
think of
also you
it.
mentioned something about it being
Yeah.
archaic, and like you were the only startup in the conference, and not everybody's very receptive. And again, like working with bigger organizations like banks are not very like easy and fast. So that brings another dimension, right? So w- so and and there's a lack of startups too in the scene, which brings me to
Yeah.
my question: how do VCs perceive your startup, your idea, and how was your fundraising strategy in general?
Yeah. I think most VCs see our company or similar companies as a moonshot rather than anything else. Because there's a lot of technological complexity in it. Some things might not work, and they might not work because technology is not as advanced, right? We couldn't do AI agents before AI was what it is right now, for example, right? And it's the same in our field. So some things might just not work, which is a big risk, of course. And then a company like ours doesn't work with 2 clients, 10 clients, 1,000 clients. It's like we're talking about global adoption here, right? Because we work with passports from around the world. We don't only sell in the UK or only in Germany or only France. We sell for companies from all over the world, right? So it's like it's an adoption problem too. Are people ready for this kind of solution? Which is something we're still testing, really, even after 2 years and a half of building this. Do people care about privacy? Some do, some don't. Are they okay to use their passport instead of their face, for example? Because sometimes using your passport feels much more intrusive than using your face. Although using our technology, the risks are so much lower, right? Than using your face, which goes to a database. And in case of a data breach or in case of a hack, everybody has your face, right? So it really depends on how you look at it. And we have this question a lot in our heads. Are people ready for this, right? I know if you saw other innovative companies which are building around us right now, like WorkCoin, which do you know about WorkCoin? Yeah, so WorkCoin is a company which is building a global identity system where instead of face or instead of passport, they scan your eyes.
Oh,
Yes, well, it's interesting and scary at the same time. Advantages and disadvantages of every solution, of course, but they're expanding incredibly quickly. Incredibly quickly. They have millions of people who already scan their eyes with their devices, right, to prove that they are human for different use cases, right?
why do you think
So,
that's the case
and that's the case for what?
for
Sorry.
such a fast expansion? Like why people are so receptive to scanning their eyes?
Well, they have their advantages. I mean, they have a lot of funding, and it's kind of Sam Altman is also not, I don't know if guiding them, but
Oh,
it's
got it.
his part of
Got it.
that
Got it.
initiative,
Got it.
so they already have the brand
Mm,
there. They don't have to build what we had to build from the beginning with our backgrounds, right? Like they already come with a very, very good people who have incredible backgrounds. While us, we came with what, a master degree, and that wasn't Stanford or whatever, right? Although it was a very good university in
yeah.
Europe,
Yeah.
it wasn't Stanford, right? So we have to climb the ladder
Mm,
step by step,
mm,
while they had the advantage of we're already amazing,
yeah.
that matters. That matters. This can break or make a company for sure. It's much easier to raise money when everyone knows you
Mm,
than when nobody heard about you before you message them,
yeah.
It makes a difference, of course. So
Yeah.
yeah.
But you guys did raise seed funding of
Yeah, we
$2.55
did.
million dollars,
Hmm. Yeah.
and there were different investors, but there were some angel investors, there were some VCs.
Yeah.
What was your fundraising strategy like when you pitch? And I always ask this question from founders, and different people have different experiences. And when it comes to their pitch, when it comes to like talking to VCs, how was your experience?
Yeah. Well, so it took us a long time. It took us 8 months to
Mm,
raise our seed round. We got many no's, many, many, many no's. And the thing is, we also made many mistakes. Instead of looking for the lead investor first, we tried to negotiate the terms with every single VC, which took a lot of time. While if an investor said, "I'm going to be the lead investor for this round," we said the terms, and then those are the terms for everyone.
oh,
While we kind of tried to negotiate with 100 VCs, and some of them said no, some of them said maybe, some of them never responded to us, and so on, which was a waste of time from our side. Then we also weren't really sure what we are looking for. Being the first time when you raise. Previously, I just bootstrapped all my stuff, but now it was just a different game, and I didn't really know the rules, which is a very important thing. That's why I recommend everyone to talk with other founders who raise money before you try to raise, because some mistakes are really silly and you really want to avoid them, because some of our mistakes costed us 3-4 months really of, yeah, which is a lot, right? It was also kind of the beginning of our stay in London, so we didn't know many people. It was definitely much harder. And then, but our strategy was overall, and we kind of outlined that a bit better, refined it much better towards the end of our fundraising period. We just wanted to be investors who are aligned with our values. That was very important. We said no to investors. Although we needed the money, we said no to investors who we weren't sure they are aligned with what we want and what's the long-term strategy of the company, and not just want a quick win and then forget about us and so on. So that took quite some time because we grilled our investors down as much as they did with us. So that definitely took much more time than, just saying yes to anyone who can put money on the table. That plus we have a pretty big round. We have two venture funds and 19 angels. You can imagine that took some time,
it did. It did.
coordinating everyone, and it
Well,
took 3 months to finish all the contracts.
oh wow.
Really. Yeah.
Is,
So yeah.
is it harder to negotiate with firms or angel investors?
It depends. What's harder to negotiate with angels is the valuation of the company,
Oh,
because they invested their own money. So for them, it makes a really big difference.
hmm,
While what was harder to negotiate with the VC was the go-to-market strategy, and like, is this actually how you're gonna achieve the next milestones, and blah 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 blah, business model related questions and so on. So it really depends, but yeah,
did,
we definitely had our angels much before our funds, venture funds. Yeah.
got it. So you mentioned actually very useful stuff that you need a lead investor to
Yes,
make the negotiations easier. And
100%.
you said it's important that your values align with the investors' values.
Yeah.
Did you, when it comes to pitch, do you like kind of, did you have to change and pitch according to who you were talking to, or were you like had a very uniform strategy when it comes to pitching, and you were like, this is the company, this is obviously, you polish it more and more every time you talk, but I'm talking about the way you were like talking
Yeah.
about your company.
Yeah, you just put a ball in my court. So actually something else I do besides all that. I do communication consultancy.
Oh wow, you do
Actually, yeah,
everything.
I've been training myself since high school in communication. And I've been very, very passionate about it. I mean, I just sometimes, maybe not weekly, but often enough, I just go in parks, sit there on the bench for a few hours, and I just observe people. I think it's so beautiful. You understand so much when only sees gestures and body language, but you don't understand what they say because they're too far away from you. And you understand human nature much better. And I've been very passionate about that since I was very young. So now that you asked me about changing the pitch, what the approach we had was to be authentic all the time. So we are ourselves no matter what, but we just use a different language, right? Based on the person. Do they care more about money? Then we're going to use that language, but it's still us, right? It's still the same company. You look at it from a different
Yeah.
angle, from a different facet. It's not like I'm changing
Yeah.
the business model because of them. No, it's the same thing, but you sell it in a different way.
Nice.
Or if they cared about the dynamics between Zvezdan and I'm not going to focus on money, right? I can put it there as a sentence, but nothing more than that. And I'm going to try to address their concern, with, messages like, yeah, so Zvezdan and we worked together even before we had Outdid and blah, blah, blah. Like I just told them a different part of the story, although they didn't necessarily ask for it. But I realized from the very 2-3 sentences what they care about. And I made the whole conversation about that, addressing their potential concerns, although maybe they weren't even aware of it.
Very interesting. So,
So,
well, one, you're a
yeah.
true Renaissance woman. You're doing everything. That's really cool. And
Mostly people are related, so
yeah.
I don't really diversify that much. I tried to learn Python, but I said that's a bit
Not
that's
a
a
bit
bit
too much.
too diverse.
Yeah,
It's a
true.
bit too diverse, so I need to be a bit more niche.
No, that makes sense though. Like,
Yeah,
really
yeah,
refining your message according to, obviously the company stays the same as you said, but you're just refining your
yeah,
message. If somebody cares about privacy a lot, you want to talk about privacy instead of focusing on other aspects of things, right? Um,
yeah. Right.
and
Exactly. The story is very big. The story is complex. It has so many angles, so many. It's multifaceted, right?
yeah.
And I saw many people. Sometimes I jump in calls with my friends,
Mhm.
and I just, after the call, I tell them, "Hey, look, when the person said that, you actually didn't address the concern, although you responded to the question. But the person had a different concern. They just didn't put it into words, you know?
Mm.
And that's what we do. So we actually worked a lot. I worked so much with my co-founder to see these signals, because sometimes people say one thing, but they have something else in their mind. And you have to pick that. What do they actually want to hear? Like what's actually their concern? Because if they ask about, but how are you going to spread the resources? Maybe what they had in their mind is, okay, I'm trying to understand if they are building this company for money or they're building it because they're actually passionate about the problem. So you don't respond with, yeah, we're gonna spend it on business development and engineering. And no, you want to say like, so we're gonna allocate the resources to the best of our knowledge in order to make this vision happen. The answer is completely different, but you address their concern.
Very,
So
very
yeah.
interesting and very.
So
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I don't mention.
no, that's it. That's it. So basically it's very important to observe people,
Mm-hmm.
because when you talk to them, I don't see them as they're superior or they're inferior. Like, no, we are like humans.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to make a partnership together.
Mm-hmm.
And I fully understand that sometimes we don't say the things as directly as we want to. sometimes it's because of fear, sometimes it's because of we don't know how to communicate it better. You can just think of a relationship, right? A couple relationship. When the girl says, yeah, I don't know what I want to eat. That's dangerous.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
dangerous,
yeah.
right? Correct. And that's a very obvious example of she actually wants to say something else, but not in the direct way. And you have to somehow get it, right?
Mm.
The exact same thing with investors, with customers, with partners, with our teammates. What do they actually want to say?
So
You know?
if I just for myself,
Yeah.
just to remember, because I feel like it's a very
Yeah.
valuable lesson to summarize what you said about funding strategy is
Yeah.
one, it's very important to find a lead investor so the negotiating becomes easier to navigate and takes
Yeah.
less time.
Yeah.
Second saying was obviously approach funding on equal footing, right? Like you both are both the investor and the founder are on equal standing and you're just negotiating partnerships. So that's how you should
Exactly.
approach. Third, you said it's really important to really like make sure your values remain kind of unchanged and you choose investors based on the ones that align with your values. and uh,
Yes.
and the fourth one, I believe you said, when doing the pitching, you gotta refine your pitch. Well, obviously, core element stays the same. The way you tell the
Yeah.
story becomes a bit different, right?
Yes.
Did I
Yeah.
miss
That's
anything?
so
Did I
important.
miss anything?
No, that's really perfect. You did a really great job at summarizing.
Great,
Yeah.
great.
So focusing on looking at understanding people's concerns is really important. I think it's one of the most important one, besides values, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah,
Wait, it's been a fascinating episode. I appreciate your time, genuinely. We're coming towards the end, unfortunately. So I'll ask a few questions, and I'm sure you have better things to do on a Wednesday evening instead of talking to me.
yeah. Maybe I will just go for a walk.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I prevented your walk time. But now that you've raised funding and the process is
Mhm.
continuing with R&D, do you have any milestones for the upcoming years? Any like the timelines that you have in mind?
Yeah. So right now we're focusing much more on listening people.
Hmm.
We're kind of training ourselves. We're training us to ask much better questions rather than selling out it and selling technology because we know it's a cool technology, but not everyone cares about that, right? So right now we're exercising the way we communicate with more people than just our potential customers or our investors. How do you communicate with regulators? Because they have a different game to play. The rules are different, right? So I can't tell them how great the technology is because they don't care about that.
Mm.
Or how do we talk with other governmental bodies? Because we have to. How do we talk with our lawyers, in order to get our policies in place and so on and so on? How do we attract more incredible talent to be part of this vision and so on? Like basically kind of understanding what people care about and addressing that. Yeah, that's we to be fair, we struggled a little bit to understand what regulators actually care about, or what our potential new teammates care about, and so on, right? So right now we're trying to refine that so we know when we go to a conference, I randomly meet with a regulator. I'm like, wait, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So I already have my pitch in mind. I know what they care about. So I know what story to give to them.
Mhm.
It's the same story. It's just a different chapter of it.
Do you,
So that's something we're working on
do
it.
you guys think of raising another round at some point, or do you think you're still fine with this seed funding and you'll continue building it with it so far?
We're still fine, yeah, for sure. We're
Mhm.
still because as I told you, we invested most of our resources in R&D,
Hardly, yeah.
and that's not necessarily we didn't expand much more than we needed to.
Hmm.
And so we are fine for now.
Hmm.
And we will definitely want to raise another round when we see a big opportunity ahead of us that we can
Got it.
definitely jump on,
Got it.
not just hypothetically
Yeah.
speaking.
I think
So
I
yeah.
failed to ask this question, and it's completely fine if you don't want to answer it. But I didn't ask about the monetization strategy because,
Okay.
and I'm really curious because there are two parties, right? Two very separate parties, and you're the one in the middle. So
Yeah.
who's monetizing it? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So we are B2B2C.
Uh,
We sell to companies, and our product is used by their customers,
oh, okay.
right? We sell to, let's say, Uber, but people who rents, people who want to be drivers for Uber are using our product. The company is paying for us. We're a B2B service,
Okay.
right? So they are paying
Okay.
in different ways. Some companies pay per verification. Some companies have a cap per month.
Yeah.
It really depends on the size
Hmm.
of the company and what they need identity verification
Hmm.
for. We're definitely much more flexible because we're a startup, so we can definitely give much more flexible packages because of that and because of what they need. We are quite we for us it is very important to help them achieve their vision too, right? Like we grow together, literally. This partnership happens because both of us are going to be much better together.
Got it. So it's a
You know?
horizontal solution that gets implemented by companies, which then
Yes,
deliver it to their customers.
exactly.
Exactly.
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah,
Um,
perfect. That's great.
my, I guess my final question would be, and I wasted enough of your time with these questions. Um,
Come on.
um, what, looking back, if you could go back in time, um, what would you do differently? And also, what would you advise to aspiring entrepreneurs? And maybe you can also touch upon aspiring female entrepreneurs, right? Um,
Mm.
Start a company and yeah, like what advice do you have for them?
Well, I think one of the biggest things I would have liked to do when I was younger in general was to be much more pushy. Like push for what I want.
Yeah.
If I wanted funding by the end of November and today is June, I must push to do that, right? Because the reason why we didn't move a bit faster in some specific areas of our business, or the reason why we didn't raise money faster, and so on, was because we weren't pushy enough to ask for what we want,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So definitely be pushy, be bold, and don't look around. It's we also wasted quite some time looking too much at competition, and along the way, some of those companies went bankrupt. And we focused so much on them that we thought, wow, like how can we build this company when this other company is building kind of something similar and they went bankrupt? All that time, all those emotions were wasted in a way, right? Always keep an eye on the competition, but don't stare too much because you're gonna fall, you know? I think that's quite important. Be pushy, be bold, and focus on your achieving your vision, whatever that requires. You know,
Yeah, great lesson. Thank you
that's
so much, Anna.
important.
Anna, it's been a very interesting episode, genuinely. And
That's so true. It was really great. I think you had really good questions. And
thank
thank you
you.
so much for taking the time.
Oh, of course.
It's
No,
really
no, it's my
beautiful.
genuine pleasure. And I hope we can stay in touch after this too. I hope it's
You
not
are in London, right?
exactly.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Now you can just let me know whenever you have time and we can perhaps grab coffee. I really appreciate your time.
great.
I wish all the luck and success with your company. And yeah, if we're at the end of our episode, if you want to say anything else or
I hope, I wish everyone to achieve their dreams and visions if that impacts the world in a positive way.
great. Thank you so much, Anna.
Yeah,
You have a
that's
great
it.
evening.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you so much.